how Southern am I? I actually don't know. I don't know that I can really answer that for myself. I think maybe you have to decide that for me. You're an outsider. I mean, maybe you live in the South too, but either way, you're not me. You're able to look at me from a third party and figure this out, whether or not I truly am. Well, I mean, I am Southern, but how Southern am I? And I'm sure I could go online and take one of those quizzes, and it's gonna, ask annoying cliche questions like about sweet tea and the word y'all and stuff like that. But that's too superficial for me. Let me just tell you a few things about myself, and then in the comments you can try to help me figure out how Southern I am. So here's the deal. I've lived my whole life in the South. I was born and raised in Fort Payne, Alabama. That's 18 years right there. Then the first year of college I moved to Florida, and then the next 3 years in Virginia. So it's still all in the South. I traveled overseas internationally quite a bit during those college years. I went to Ecuador, New Zealand, Thailand, Korea, and Trinidad. So I mean, I've been very cultured. I've traveled outside, the United States. Then after I finished college, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where I still live in the Nashville, Tennessee area. About a year into moving to Nashville, then I met my wife. We've been together for 10 years now. We've been married 8.5, and she's from Northern California, Sacramento. So it's like, I grew up Southern. I married a West Coast girl. As you can see, or as you can hear, my accent is not overly obviously Southern. In fact, when most people hear that I was born and raised in Fort Payne, Alabama, they think, well, what's the rest of the story? Why don't you have a thicker accent? Well, here's the rest of the story. For what this is worth, and I think it's worth a lot, my mom was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and she moved to Alabama when she was 15. So my dad's from the South, but being raised in that household, I suppose the way she talked influenced me enough to kind of water down the Southern accent. On top of that, her parents were the grandparents that I was around all the time. And so that includes a Mexican grandmother from Buffalo, New York, and an Italian grandfather from Kenosha, Wisconsin. And they were like full-blooded, like their parents, came off the ship and the whole thing. So I've got that influence, an international influence, Northern influence, and I think because of that, it helped me hear the Southern accent. It helped me hear the Alabama accent. As far as if you hear the accent, you don't continue speaking the accent because then it's an accent. It's like what about like a Midwestern accent? I'd hear that on TV and I could mock that. I could repeat it. Well, it became the same way with the Southern accent. Okay, so what are some other things? I'm not really into sports. I'm into hiking and exploring and doing stuff, being outdoors, but I'm not into sports. So by default, that makes me less Southern, right? And I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan for years. By default, if you're a guy in the South, you're supposed to be crazy about eating bacon all the time and, beef burgers, all that. So to be a vegan by default, that kind of knocks me down some points as well. So I don't know. What do you think? How Southern am I? Like I said, I grew up here most of my life. Country music. I do listen to country music, but it's not like my favorite type of music. I'm not opposed to it, but I definitely listen to country music. So I'm just trying to think of cliches, about what people think about Southerners. But I know I may not sound like it. Now, and I could put on the accent if you need me to. Yeah, man, I grew up in Alabama, and that's how we roll down there, roll tide, you know what I'm saying? I can get into that character, but it's clearly a character for me. Despite when I go back there, I hear people talking completely differently. So there I did it. I made a video in less than 5 minutes in which you get to look inside this window and figure out if you're looking at a guy who you would even think is Southern. If so, give me a grade, like out of 100. How Southern am I? Not only like as far as how I sound and culturally, all those things. Because that's something I wonder, like, how Southern am I? My mom's from the North, and I had quite international grandparents. So how Southern am I? You help me decide. I'm Nick Shell.